And welcome to this week's episode of the Entrepreneur Insider podcast. Today, my guest I'm super excited about is Jeremy Miner. Jeremy is the CEO and founder of Seventh Level Communications, which is a sales training company which teaches entrepreneurs and sales professionals how to sell in the new and ever-growing economy. So, Jeremy, thanks for being here, man.
You know, it's late in my day. My brain is like jello. It's almost 4 o'clock here where I live. So I will do my best to give you the most value I can for your audience. It's been a crazy day. My hair's all over the place. Insane. What's going on with you?
Cool, man. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's quite early over here at the moment. So, I'm excited about this interview. So in the office nice and early to punch this one out, man. So tell us about yourself, Jeremy. Tell us about Jeremy, where you came from, what you do. Give us the rundown.
So like Nathan said, I'm the CEO of Seventh Level Communications, and I've been a sales professional since the summer of 2000. That was actually when I got my first sales position. I was how old was I? 21, 22 back then. I was going to college, was completely broke, had no idea what I wanted to do. I grew up in central Missouri on a farm, so I never really thought about being a salesperson or a business person. Let's just put it that way, right? You don't learn how to sell or communicate from your parents usually, or your school that you go to. So I was going to college. I still remember the day one of my roommates came into me and said, dude, there's this meeting up at the campus. They're hiring people, college kids, to go out and sell these like alarm systems door to door in the summer. And you can go out and sell a ton of those. It's really easy to sell, and you can make enough money during the 4-month summer. So you can make enough money so you don't have to work while you're going to school, and you're going to get rich type of thing. So I'm like, well, why not? So we went down there, and it's crazy. There was probably 70, 80 students listening to the sales pitch. Everybody signs up. Everybody's hired. It's a straight commission job. There's really no interview. It's just like, you're here, come sign up. So signed up, me and a bunch of my friends. They shipped me out to Boise, Idaho. I don't know if you know where Boise, Idaho is,
Yep.
But it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere in the Western United States. Sent me out to Boise, Idaho, sell these home security systems. And my whole way of thinking at that point, because they just gave me a script, that's really all I had. No training experience, nothing, right? This 21-year-old schmuck. And I'm all excited, and I knock on these doors, and I noticed after the first day that it was a lot harder to sell than what they were saying, right? Had all these doors slammed in my face. People said they don't want it, they don't need it, they've got a dog, they've got a gun, it's too expensive, can you call me back in a week, a month, a year, 5 years later? And going through that, the first 3 weeks, I didn't even make one sale, like real, like made zero money, straight commission. Most of my friends did, they all quit. But I stayed, and my sales manager said, you really need to learn how to sell. So go down to the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, I think it's Barnes & Noble or something like that. And I bought all these books on how to sell. And they're what I call like traditional selling techniques. At the time, I had no idea. I was just devouring information because I wanted to make money. So I went out, I started using some of these techniques, and I found that some of them worked. I started making some sales. But what I also found is a lot of those techniques really didn't work. And if I used them, I actually got more sales resistance from like more objections than if I didn't use them. So that's kind of how my story really first started. And the same time while I was selling for this company, after I got back from the summer, my major was behavioral science. So I'm a behavioral science major. So I specialized in the study of communication within the human mind. And that's called like neuroscience, if you guys are familiar with neuroscience. John Astroff teaches a lot of that on The Secret. So that's what I was studying while I was going to college. So the issue that I was coming up against is traditional selling techniques were teaching me all these techniques over here. The behavioral science, which was the study of the psychology of the mind and why we make buying decisions, and persuasion, like communication, how humans interact, was teaching me something completely different than traditional selling was teaching me. So this was like a huge mental block in my mind, why these two things that I was going through were teaching something completely different. Make sense?
Yeah.
So and this is kind of an interesting thing, and I actually wrote this down because I wanted to help your viewers or people who are on this podcast really kind of understand the study of behavioral science and how it applies to customers making decisions on yes or no, yes buying, no not buying. So according to behavioral science, and you guys can write this down if you want, there's 3 main communication modes. Okay, and this is just based on the facts. This is pure science. Number 1, we're actually the least persuasive when we tell people things. So we're the least persuasive when we tell people things, or we attempt to dominate or push them into doing something that we want them to do. According to science, it's the least persuasive. Now that also includes, and write this down, this is going to completely flip what you got in selling on top of its head. And I know it did for me when I learned. I was like, that's just crazy. Also on that is when you make a presentation or you tell your story. We're all taught you need to tell your story or make a great presentation. According to behavioral science or neuroscience, it's actually the least persuasive way to sell, which is insane because everybody does it, right? But it's least persuasive. Also, when you give a sales pitch or you put sales pressure on a person, and the biggest one is when you assume the sale, which every, what I call old sales guru has been teaching since the 1940s. Okay, assume the sale, ABCs of closing. In behavioral science, it's actually the least persuasive way to communicate or sell something. Number 2, you're more persuasive when you attempt to have a discussion or a debate with somebody. So you're more persuasive. You just have, and think about it from this perspective. Let's say that you're married. If you try to push your spouse into doing something that you want them to do, what do they typically do? They push back, right? They resist. But if you have a discussion with them, sometimes they open up, right? So it's a little bit more persuasive. But number 3, right, this is really important. You're the most persuasive when you allow others to persuade themselves. Most persuasive when you allow others to persuade themselves. That's actually called dialogue, or what I call now, what I've developed called neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. It's called neuro-emotional persuasion questioning, or it stands for NEPQ. So what was happening when I was going through my sales career, I was learning what now is called NEPQ, these neuro-emotional persuasion questions from my instructors. These old gurus are teaching me this thing, and I'm like, let me pull over what I'm learning behavioral science and see if I can incorporate it into what these guys are teaching me. And to be very upfront with you, at that point I was probably like 23, I was just a kid still. I had convinced myself that surely there was some sales trainer in the world that had already written a course that had all this behavioral science elements in it. So I would know exactly what question to ask, every question just A to Z. And I went out and bought probably 50 different courses, went to every conference you can think of, Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Spin Selling, at Holmes. I mean, every sales trainer in the book that you can think of, Jordan Belfort, all those guys, okay? But what I found is some of them would teach you to ask some questions, but they were more logic-based questions. And do people buy based on logic or emotion?
Emotion.
Emotion. We always hear that, but there was really no course that taught A to Z what questions to ask to get people to really sell themselves to the extent. So I was like, well, crap, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to figure all this out on my own. So basically through trial and error, okay, every single my sales kept increasing. So my first year, after incorporating some of this into my sales process, I made about 115 grand. Not bad for a college kid that was like 22 at the time, barely 22.
And this is still with the alarm company?
Yeah, just selling alarms door to door. The next year,
same everything, just different sales techniques.
Just different sales techniques. I lived with it from 0 to 115 grand. The next year, by incorporating more of those questions, starting to learn when and how to ask those, because I would form some questions, some would work, some wouldn't. I would weed out the ones who didn't, replace them. It's just a trial and error process, literally for years of my life. Here I made over 250,000. So I went from 115 to 250,000. By 2006, which was 4 years later, I made over 760,000 that year selling the same thing.
Wow.
115 to 715. And then 2008, 2009, I kept learning, kept growing, kept developing more of those questions. And by 2008, 2009, if you remember what was happening to the world's economy, everything was crashing. In my industry, salespeople's incomes were like getting chopped in half. Like literally half the company's force like left. Like it just weren't buying, right? People were holding on to their money. They didn't have credit to buy. But my income that year went from over 760,000 to 1.2 million.
Wow.
And people were like, what is going on? And I kept perfecting it, kept learning. And by 2012 was when I had that big, I don't know if you've seen it online, had a big award that I won. I was ranked either number 44th or 45th in the entire world. Just do a Google search, 44th or 45th in the entire world, in the world of direct sales, making over 2.4, it's either 2.4 or 2.5 million a year in net commissions at my job as a salesperson, employee. And that really put me on the map. And that's kind of when I started developing the sales training courses that we launched just about 1 year ago. It's been kind of crazy that the year has definitely gone by fast. So that's where the whole story started.
Yeah, fantastic, man. I mean, I've gone through a lot of your stuff as well, man. And like you said, basically rewiring all the old methods of selling. Like, I mean, we're doing this podcast for all the viewers, but I think I'm taking the most notes out of everyone. So,
let me ask you this question. So, and I want to ask your viewers to think about this. If I were to ask you, because most people never think about this in selling, and I never did a long time ago. I would never thought about it. If I were to ask you when the model of selling was invented that almost 100% of salespeople still use today, what year do you think that would be?
It's about the 1970s, I believe.
Keep going.
Lower, 1930s.
Keep going.
1800s.
1898.
Wow.
Right? The sales model that 99.9% of salespeople used throughout in 1898. Just do a Google search by a guy named Elias St. Elmo Lewis. I wrote this down. Elias, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right. Elias St. Elmo Lewis, and it's called the AIDA model of selling. AIDA model of selling was invented in 1898. He actually sold circuses, whatever. And that stands for attention, interest, desire, action. You ever seen that movie called Glengarry Ross, like Copies for Closers?
Yep.
Remember how he's up on the chalkboard and he writes out AIDA, like attention, interest, desire, action? That's where that came from, 1898. Sales model that most salespeople that are even listening to me right now are using was developed all the way back in 1898. I want you to think about that for a second and think about if consumers' buying behaviors have changed at all since 1898.
100%, isn't it? You know, we live in a world these days where, you know, the buyer's more educated than ever. You know, they got access to information at their fingertips, you know, and with so many options on the market as well, you know, that the buyers, you know, doesn't always buy the first product because they always got the idea to shop around, you know. But with your sales system, you know, I've gone through it myself. I said I've implemented a lot of stuff into my businesses and seen some great results in terms of, you know, old selling models, you know. And to be entirely honest, I've done a lot of the newer type of stuff as well, but none of it, you know, I've done the Jordan Belfort stuff and all that as well. And you think that you're getting ahead in terms of the psychology aspect, but then you throw your training into the mix and it just takes to a whole nother level. So it's phenomenal, man, what you're doing.
How has it helped you over other training courses that you've gone through, if I could ask?
Yeah. So how it's helped me, I believe the biggest thing that I've come across from your training is be very easy in the sales process. Don't be gung-ho. Don't be pushy hard. Don't be, what's the word? Don't be overly excited about your product or service. You know, understand, you know, to come in an easy pace and be very laid back in the process and help and let the buyer persuade themselves.
Correct. Yeah, because the question is how the heck do you get somebody just to persuade themselves? Can you show up and say, hey, dude, just persuade yourself and write me out a check. No, you have to learn very specific questions to ask, when and how to ask those to quite literally get your, like you said, your prospects to sell themselves. So if somebody doesn't do that, it would mean they're still using some of the old, outdated, traditional selling techniques all the way back from 1898 that have been rewrapped, repackaged every decade for the most part. And they're not using enough of what I call NEPQ, or neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. That's a difference between those type of conversion rates. And when you have lower conversion rates, that means you make less money.
Yeah, yeah. Because you hear in sales all the time, don't you? It's all a numbers game. It's all a numbers game, but that only means if you're not converting, doesn't it? It's almost a cop out.
Yeah, it's funny because when a sales trainer says after they train you, like, hey, and you're asking like, why is this not working? Oh, well, it's just a numbers game. Like, you just got to call 100 people and you're going to get a lot of no's, but you're going to get that one yes. Well, that's just like a cop out on basically what you taught me doesn't really work or apply in 2017. You know, maybe it worked in the 1980s in boiler room selling days, or the 90s, or even 10, 12 years ago before social media. But we live in a completely different age. Like you said, people have the power of the internet and social media to basically know exactly what your products are, what price points are, who your competitors are, where your home office is. They know everything about you by simply doing a Google search on their computer, heck, even their phone now. So because of that power of so many choices that they know they have, they no longer will be manipulated or pressured into buying something, because they know they have many other options to choose the same thing you're selling with somebody else. Yeah. So unless you have those skills to get them emotionally involved and to persuade themselves that they want to solve their problems, because most people don't even know they have problems, and they want to do it with you, you're going to play the numbers game the rest of your life and work your ass off into the ground to barely make any money. It's not a fun game if you're playing that game.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And how important do you think the skill set of sales, especially the sales model that you teach, is important to either the business owner or the entrepreneur, or just a sales professional, if they want to really, grow and expand not just their life, but also their income, the charities they can give to, all the things that they want to do with their life?
I mean, Nathan, in my opinion, and I've got this bird's eye view here because I see what's out there in the market, it's really life or death.
Yep.
At point. Kind of some things we were saying, but in our day and age, products and services are all very similar. I mean, it was a lot different 50, 60, even 30 years ago, but in our day and age, products and services, for the most part, are very similar, and your prospects know that because, like I said, two things: the internet and social media. So the only thing that really separates extremely successful entrepreneurs and companies is two things: their marketing ability to stand out, and number two, how they communicate their message, how they actually sell. If you don't have those things, you're just like everybody else. I would say that's the difference.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. And what do you believe in terms of the entrepreneur learning how to sell, influence, and persuade? Do you believe in the influence and persuasion techniques, or is it more on what you teach?
I mean, what I teach is influence and persuasion techniques. Neuro-emotional persuasion questioning, like I said, has neuroscience and behavioral science roots. So it's the deep psychology of the mind, pulling out the problems from that person's conscious mind that they might have put in the back of their mind, right? Pulling it out front and center, where not only are they telling you what their problems are, but more importantly, who are they telling?
Yeah.
They're telling themselves, right? And when people start to tell themselves what their problems are and why they have those problems, and more importantly, how those problems are affecting them, you think they become more open to changing their situation and changing it with you. It's a night and day difference. So you're either influencing someone to buy from you, or you're influencing someone not to buy from you in our day and age. So you can either influence them to buy, or influence them to buy from somebody else. That's what you're basically doing.
Yeah.
So apply for death for your business to learn those type of skills, I would suggest.
Awesome, man. Yeah, completely agree. And in terms of if our viewers want to find out more about what you do and how they can get involved, tell us a little bit more about your program, how it all works, what they're going to find inside of there, and what they're going to learn besides what you're.
Yeah. And I'm gonna throw one more thing out there, and then I wrote down some things that might be able to help your audience kind of get to a higher level. That's kind of some of our not so advanced training, but something that they're involved in and really see some tangible results. So I'm going to read this article from the Harvard Business Review. I was reading this on my flight back to my office a couple of days ago, and here's what the Harvard Business Review says about selling. The article's called "Dismantling the Sales Machine," and I'm reading here, quote, "Recently, sales has been caught off guard by a dramatic shift in customers' buying behaviors." And they go on to say this: "Even as leadership has tightened compliance with sales processes that have served so well in decades past, sales performance has grown increasingly erratic. Companies are reporting longer sales cycle times." So everybody listening, are you seeing like a longer sales cycle? People slower to make decisions? There's a reason for it. "Lower conversion rates." Are you seeing lower conversion rates than maybe you did 5 or 10 years ago? Well, there's a reason for that. They're also saying that they're seeing less reliable forecasts. So they can't really predict what their sales force is going to do in the next 6 months or a year. That's a major problem. And compressed margins, meaning their price points are being negotiated the hell out of, and everybody's competing on price. So they go on to say this machine has pretty much flat out stalled. That's coming from the Harvard Business Review. So it's not just me making these suggestions. We're talking about a lot of people are starting to see, a lot of economic experts are really starting to see this in the sales world. Any questions on that?
No, that sort of makes sense, man. It sort of ties in well to what I guess you teach. It basically backs it right up that even, major companies are, understanding that their sales processes need to change in order to capitalize on the 21st century buyer, because like we're saying, the buyer's more educated than ever before. Now they don't even need to go take the time and go to the computer, just pull out their iPhone. I'll speak to sales professionals all the time, and they say, I'll be in a sales presentation, and when I'm talking to them, the buyer will actually pull out their phone and actually Google my company or Google the product, or see what I'm saying is correct. Or look at reviews online. We live in a world now where there's no way around it. You need to learn, obviously, how to influence persuade the right way.
There's nowhere to hide. And if you think about it, 20 plus years ago, so just go back 20 years, go back to like the late 1990s. What was the bridge between the consumer and the company? It was, of course, years, right? Besides TV and radio and maybe some print media, how did the consumer learn about the company's products or services? They learned through the salesperson, right? But like you said, with the power of social media and the internet, everything's completely changed. You can be in the middle of a presentation. They're going to Google you to find out what your price points are. What are you going to do then? How are you going to react if they bring up your price point 2 minutes into your presentation? Okay. 20 years ago, you didn't have that issue. Everything's now changed. So what I did for kind of your people, we put this program together for some other people podcasts, and I thought this might work for your audience after you told me who would be on here. So let me preference this. So what really pisses me off, okay, and I'm a pretty boring guy, but every once in a while I get kind of ticked off, is because I see so many salespeople out there that even make $100,000 a year, $150,000, $200,000 a year, but they really plateau. They just plateau in their profession, and they don't break through to a point because of their income, because of their selling skills, where they're ever able to really put away a lot of money to set back and relax the last 10, 15, 20 years before they retire. They're just hustling till they're 70 or 80 at this point, right? And that really ticks me off. So what I did is I put together a program, write this down, called the Sales Accelerator System. Sales Accelerator System does just that. It gives a person the ability to sell a lot more with whatever they sell, and do it in a lot less time, because it gives them the skills necessary. We've kind of gone over an overview. Give them the skills necessary to start closing a much higher percentage of their sales, so they don't have to work their tails into the ground playing the freaking numbers game and use these old, outdated techniques of sales pressure and just the pushy salesperson that nobody likes, okay? So here's what they're gonna get in the Sales Accelerator system, and you can give everybody the link if you want to. Number one, they're gonna get and I wrote this down because I'm bad with, my wife says in my old age I'm forgetting everything, so I have to write everything down. So number one, I'm not kidding with that. What's going on? I know, right? So number one, we're going to give you guys a 5-part system that you can follow step by step to learn how to use NEPQ, neuro-emotional persuasion question. I'm going to give you a 5-step system to learn how to use neuro-emotional persuasion questions right now to explode your sales with whatever you're selling. We have customers now. We launched 14 months ago. We have over 200,000 salespeople in the world in the first year that have gone through some of our certification programs or sales training courses in over 40 countries. So it's getting out there. People want to change and they don't know where to go. Here we are. So we're going to get a 5-step system to learn how to do that. NEPQ. I'm going to give them a certified trainer as well. This is really cool. We started doing this about 6 months ago, and it's really blown people's results out of the water. So I'm going to give a certified trainer to lead them through each part of that system over the next 5 to maybe 6 business days, okay? I do that for 2 reasons. Number one, every high performer in any industry, no matter what you do, has what? Has a coach, has a trainer, right? That certified trainer of ours is going to be there to answer your questions about implementing the process into your day-to-day sales process. And let's face it, keep you accountable to actually achieve what you want to do in your sales career. So that's the 2 reasons why I do that. Now, let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask you the same, Nathan. If I were to ask you the price of a product like that to get one-on-one training, so one-on-one, like mano-to-mano training, not with me, but one of my certified trainers, one-on-one training with someone who's certified in this material, the new model of sound, to learn those skills to help blow up somebody's sales income, what do you think that price point would be?
Anywhere from around about $5,000.
Well, not that much. It'd probably be a few $1,000s is what we typically do, anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. But you probably didn't guess it, that we're actually letting people do that for only $7. $7. 7th level communication, $7. It's only $7, and it's really important that you hear why. Because if you're like me, if you hear something that sounds too good to be true, I would say you'd be right in that way of thinking, because that wouldn't make any sense. So there's 2 reasons why we let people go through the sales accelerator system for only $7. I know it's crazy, but there's 2 reasons. You'll understand why we do this. Reason number 1 is that it's only $7 is, quite frankly, the program, and I think you've been through part of that program yourself. I think you've seen some, so you know the results it gets. So that program is so good that people get results so quickly that a high percentage of those clients, it's like 87% of those clients, end up making significant investments with us in more advanced training later on down the road to advance their sales careers. So they're repeat customers. They come back and buy to learn even more. Okay, so that's the first reason why we let it for $7. The second reason, this is really cool, this started happening about 7-8 months ago, is we have a certification program. So we certify sales professionals now, and we have very high, very large, some of these companies are publicly traded companies, some of them are privately held companies, but we're talking companies that do in excess of 100 million a year, 250 million a year. There's some in there over 500 million a year in revenue that come to us that only, at this point, only hire their salespeople that are certified in our program because they know the selling skills they've learned. They don't hire from anybody else. They only hire from us. So we certify salespeople that go through our training. They can qualify to be put in our job placement program. okay, which is really cool. They always ask me, like, where can I get a higher paying sales job, right? Like, I'm crushing it here at my job. I'm the #1 salesperson, but I'm capped at this level. I want a sales job where I can make this much, right? Everybody's always been asking that. So we put them in the certification program. Depending on what they're certified, what level, these companies will hire them. And when they're placed with a company, 7th level communications, we get an override off of the revenue they produce for that company. That's why we let people do this for $7. You can see now, it's a no-brainer for us on our end. And when I say these jobs that we place people in, and first of all, they can keep selling whatever they're selling now and just make more sales selling it, or they can be placed in this program where they can get hired into a higher paying sales position. These sales positions are not run-of-the-mill, stuck behind a counter sales positions. These positions are 6-figure positions automatically that start out at that, multiple 6 figures. Some of them, several of them, are actually over 3 to 4 to 500,000 a year sales positions that our certified people are able to go into. That's why we let people do the accelerated program for $7 now. Questions?
No, that's fantastic, man. Yeah, it works well, doesn't it? But it becomes a win-win for everyone, and that you training people and people come in, they get the knowledge. I've been through the 21-day sales challenge. Like I said, I picked up so many golden nuggets straight out of it that I could implement straight into my own sales systems that and that I haven't learned from all the other guys in the sales industry for so many years. So it's been fantastic, man. What link do people go to find out more about that?
Yeah, so they would go to www, and maybe I can give it to you, just post it in here for everybody, but go to www.7th, so it's the number 7, and then T is in Tom H, so 7th level communications.com/start. Like I said, we're pretty boring over here, so we don't get flashy. So www.7th, it's the name of the company, 7th level communications.com/start. And what I'm going to do, I went ahead and put in a free cheat sheet there that people can use, where I teach people a 3-step process to help their prospects overcome any objection that they might have. So I'll just give that to people for free. They can download a free cheat sheet, read that, and then they'll be able to go click on some yellow button back there where they can get one of our certified level 7 trainers to take them through a 5-part sales accelerator system and get certified in that for the $7. So that's options there for most people too.
Great, man. I'll put that link in the show notes anyway, and post it on in the Facebook group as well. So, Jeremy, thanks very much, man. I think everyone's learned a fair bit. You've changed their paradigm on the 21st century model of selling. Any last things you want to leave our audience with?
Simply just want to expand your knowledge base. When I started learning this sales process, right, when I started developing neuro-emotional persuasion questions and putting that together, I got to a certain point, and this was like 5-6 years ago, where I thought I learned everything. I just thought I knew everything. I was ranked in the top 50 of all salespeople in the world selling anything, and I got this big head, a big ego. And when I started getting a big ego, I stopped learning new skills. And after a couple of years, I'm like, I'm really staying at the same level. Like, my income's not going up. I'm not learning because I have such a big head. So the biggest thing with most salespeople, if you're already somewhat successful, you gotta, in my suggestion, like I did, just shed your ego to be open to learning new skills that can get you to an even higher level than you are right now. And once everybody shreds, hey, you know what? I might not know everything. I can probably learn something new, because that's the way I am. I go down the road, I'm plugging in a new course, I'm learning something from somebody, because I know that I'm just down here on my knowledge base and I want to get here. So I got to keep learning. So I think the biggest thing is just keep learning, shed the ego, and then once you learn, start taking action and do it, and you're going to have the results.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Jeremy, thanks very much, man, for sharing your time with our audience and teaching them how to sell in the 21st century. So I'm going to put that link in all the show notes. So if people want to find out more about Jeremy and take that course and get the free cheat sheet, there'll be a link in the show notes. You can go there, click it, and get plugged straight in.
All right, brother. I'm headed out to CrossFit. Got to stay in shape.
That's it.
So I'm gonna go get my butt kicked. It's like freaking hot here today, so I'm gonna go sweat to death in the CrossFit sauna. Have a good day in Australia, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks very much. Take care.
All right, brother. Anytime.
See you, man.
See you later.